This is Amanda Welch welcoming you to this BiteSize Bio web seminar, which today is sponsored by March for Science, Rochester. Rochester, New York March for Science champions robustly funded and publicly communicated science as a pillar of human freedom and prosperity. They unite as a diverse, nonpartisan group to call for science that upholds the common good and for political leaders and policymakers to enact evidence-based policies in the public interest. Today's presentation is titled Marching for Science, How to Become a Science Advocate, and is being presented by Dr. Gail Seigel from the University of New York at Buffalo, and she's also an executive board member of the Rochester, New York March for Science. Gail serves as the diversity officer for that organization. She has a Bachelor's of Science degree from Rutgers University and a PhD from Albany Medical College with postdoctoral studies in neuroscience at the University of Rochester. She is currently a faculty member at the State University of New York at Buffalo, running a research lab that studies retinoblastoma, an eye tumor of childhood. Now, as always, we will have a question and answer session after the presentation. So please type any questions that you have into the questions box, which appears on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll put them to Gail at the end. So now, over to you, Gail, for the presentation.
Thanks, Amanda, and thank you to BiteSize Bio for hosting this webinar with the Rochester March for Science. As you can see, the title is Marching for Science, How to Become a Science Advocate, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The goals of our webinar include why advocating for science is necessary and why you should be an advocate, how to be an effective advocate for science using the skills that you've gained during your career, and ways for you to get involved in science advocacy. First, I just want to talk a bit about the March for Science, my organization, just to let you know where I'm coming from. The March for Science was an international series of rallies and marches, usually held on Earth Day. And our first march was held on April 22nd, 2017 in Washington, D.C., and we had more than 600 marches worldwide. We've since done one in April of 2018 as well. The March is a nonpartisan movement to celebrate science and the role that it plays in our everyday lives. And the goals of these marches and rallies were to emphasize that science upholds the common good and to call for evidence-based policy in the public's best interest. And our mission statement, according to our website, is the March for Science champions robustly funded, publicly communicated science as a pillar of human freedom and prosperity. We unite as a diverse, nonpartisan group to call for science that upholds the common good and for political leaders and policymakers to enact evidence-based policies in the public interest. Notice that I underline nonpartisan. We, especially our chapter, is a 501c3 charitable organization. So we are champions of science, but we do not take a political position, either political party or particular candidate. So as I mentioned, we are a 501c3. This is our local group. You can see a picture of our board meeting there. We have about 11 or 12 people on our board right now. And we started meeting in early 2017, and we've organized 2 successful annual events, as well as some other activities that we will talk about later. This is our local group. So what do we mean by a science advocate? Well, the dictionary definition of an advocate is a person who works for a cause or a group. So science advocacy means getting out in support of science, whether it's through public policy, community engagement, educational opportunities, or it is outreach to underrepresented minorities. Why do we need science advocacy? Well, we say that science needs protection. And here's just a short abbreviated list from the website of the Union of Concerned Scientists of some troubling things that are going on in our society right now. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency has eliminated some safeguards against industrial air pollution. And if we want to advocate for clean air, this is something that is of concern for us. There are political appointees that appear to be interfering in scientific grant review processes. And again, if we want scientific grants to be reviewed in a nonpartisan, free, and transparent way, we would prefer the political appointees not interfere in the process. We don't want federal research to be sidelined at the USDA. And we want them to be able to go to conferences. So these are some of the issues. Climate change is another issue. And there are a list of about 75 different items on the Union of Concerned Scientists list of topics that are of concern for us and reasons why science needs protection now more than ever. We want to encourage federal funding for scientific research. This is from the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology, and it shows the appropriations for the National Institutes of Health over time, starting from 1995. And you can see that there's a very steep increase in the amount of funding, federal funding for research. And at a certain point, it seems to, although it goes up, of course, if you look at 1995 dollars, it's pretty much leveled off. But then when you get to present time, you can see that there are some proposed budgets that would represent a major cut to federal funding for scientific research. So this is something we really need to address and need to get out and be vocal about to try to restore funding for federal research and keep the dollar amounts at least keeping up with inflation and going up. We need to engage the public. This is another very important part of what we do. And this is from Pew Research Center presented by PBS NewsHour. And it shows the disparity between the scientist view of particular topics versus the general population in the United States. For example, genetically modified foods are okay to eat. That's one statement. The number of people who agree, there's a big disparity. Only 37% of the general population thinks GMO foods are okay. 88% of scientists think that they're okay. Something like human evolution has occurred. 98% of scientists believe that evolution has occurred in humans. Only 65% of the adults, general population. Let's look at vaccines, another big disparity. 86% of scientists, 68% of the general population. Climate change, something similar. Fracking, drilling offshore. So you can see there's some big disparities. So by engaging the public, we can make a difference in how the public views some of these issues, and using science and evidence-based information, I think we can advocate for some of these things that we would know to be true. We also advocate because we're concerned with underrepresentation in science. So this is a study, we're looking at workers in science and engineering occupations. And we need to speak up because as you can see, white women are underrepresented in science, as are a number of minorities, including African Americans, Hispanics, and others. That part of what we do is to encourage better representation of diverse populations in science. And this is an important goal for us. And you can see it here in the numbers, black and white, or in color here. So why are we advocating? Some of the important things that we want policies to be made based on evidence and facts by our policymakers. As I mentioned, we want federal funding for scientific research to continue and to be robust. We want transparency so that we know what's going on in these issues. We want to engage the public and bring the science out to the people. We want to also have opportunities for future scientists and to encourage diversity in science and engineering. So these are some of the things that we advocate in our March for Science, and you can do it as part of other organizations and even on your own. So the philosophy, this is my philosophy, but I think it fits in with the advocacy, is to take science out of the lab and share it with people. All too often in our jobs, we're in our little laboratories doing our experiments, or whether you're in academia or in industry or wherever you work, we get very focused on what we're doing in our day-to-day, and you don't always think about what would it be like to take the science that I do out of my lab or out of my work and bring it out to the public and share it with people. I mean, it's a very rewarding thing to do. This picture comes from one of our expos, and you can see, I mean, kids love to see what you're doing. If there are kid-friendly things, you can get out there and show them, and it's really a lot of fun. Very, very, it's definitely a break from your everyday job. So let's talk about some barriers to advocacy, because I mean, you think you're out there thinking, well, what can I do? There are a lot of reasons why you feel like maybe you can't do something, and let's talk them through for a minute. So, one of the things is, what can I do? I'm just one person. What difference can it make? And the answer is that one person can do a lot. You don't have to be an extrovert and a people person to make a difference in being a science advocate. I'm certainly not an extrovert myself, but either by yourself, doing things yourself, or as part of a group, there's a lot that you can do, and we're going to talk about some of them that you can do to help advocate for science. Another question that comes up is, people wonder, does advocacy harm your credibility as a scientist? And the short answer appears to be no. There was actually a study done in this Journal of Environmental Communication where a scientist presented information to 1,235 people, and it was they presented either facts about climate, they had presented advocacy or policy promoting speeches, and the audience was asked to assess the credibility of the speaker, who was a scientist. And it really turned out that the credibility of the speaker did not seem to be affected by whether they were talking totally fact-based or whether they were advocating. There was nothing statistically significant, at least so you can see there was even a study about it. So it appears that you do not lose credibility when you advocate in a reasonable way. And the most common thing I hear is, I'm too busy to advocate. And believe me, I'm busy too. And there is a limit to what you can do. There are a number of things you can do, even if you're really busy. This is a picture of myself and one of my March for Science colleagues here, Becky. And this is at a farmer's market. We were giving out posters about science from our Rochester March for Science. I'll be doing this again on Sunday. Just takes a couple hours in the morning. So there are different things you can do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the busiest person who has absolutely no time to do anything to becoming more involved and doing a lot of different things. So we'll run the full range of things that you can do as a very busy person. So the most simplest way that you can advocate for science is to vote and encourage others to vote. I guess today is National Voter Registration Day here in the United States. So definitely get out there, figure out where you're to register to vote, encourage your friends and family to vote, because if you don't vote, you don't get a voice in what's going on. And it's, again, this is something you can do yourself. It shouldn't take you that long, even if you're extremely busy on voting day, or if you have early voting, find the time to vote. And it's something you can do that's very tangible and makes a difference. So if you take nothing else away from what I'm about to say, definitely make sure you get out and vote. The other thing you can do is you can contact your elected representatives. You can do this by phone, by email, or in person. And there are a few different ways of doing that. So to talk to your elected representative, first of all, you want to identify your representative. You can go online with your zip code or your postal code, whatever country you happen to be in, and identify who is representing you. And they will have contact information. And you want to contact those with whom you disagree and tell them why you disagree with what they're doing and what you'd like them to do. But also contact those with whom you agree and that you support what they're doing. It's important to do both, because they do take a tally of the disagreeing and the agreeing people that call in or send emails. Calls seem to be better than emails, mainly because email can get deleted. A call usually is answered by an intern or an assistant, and they are often taking a tally of which way the calls are going. So calls tend to be somewhat better. Personalize your message, so you can call and say, I am a scientist, I run a research lab in your district, and this issue is very important to me. and it makes it more personal to you rather than a form letter or a script that you're reading without personalization. And you want to make it timely. So if they're about to vote on the budget and you want appropriations for National Institutes of Health, definitely that's the time they're going to hear you the most, is they're about to vote on it within the next few days, and you want to contact them at that time. And finally, you want to have a clear, concrete goal when you contact them. If it's too diffuse and you hit on too many topics, it's too confusing, make it about a single issue. When you call, you can always call again about something else at a later time. So keep it really clear and concise. You can also attend town halls. You can find your local town hall also on probably your local government page, and do your homework, prepare in advance of what it is you want to talk about. And again, you want to keep this really concise, keep it to one question or one important point that you want to bring up at the town hall. And you can ask what action will be taken on this issue and see if you can get an answer that you can live with. And you want to be respectful, of course. You can stay after the town hall to meet with the official or their staff and get more information that way. And it's also a good place to network with people that are also attending the town hall. You may find a kindred spirit or someone who might want to work with you on other projects. Again, a town hall doesn't take that much time. You might go for an hour or two when it happens, and that's a one-shot thing. You can go to other ones, but again, not extremely time-consuming. If you're extremely busy but you have some money, you can donate to science-based charities. So for example, charitable foundations in honor or in memory of someone, especially if you think it would be important to the person. You can donate to environmental causes. And even your professional organization will often have a charity arm of the organization where they will have travel funds for scientists from emerging countries, or science education, or going into schools. So some of the times your professional organization will have something where you can donate and encourage science education. You can also, if you like writing, you can write op-eds for the newspaper. They're an average about 600 to 700 words. And again, pick a topic that is of high interest to you, write it very concisely, clearly, stick to one topic, send to your newspaper. And you may or may not be accepted, but don't let it discourage you, because there will be other opportunities, and you can send out op-eds on different topics and get it out to the public. People will read it, whether it's online or in a newspaper. Get the word out there through an op-ed. So again, one-shot thing, won't take a lot of time. And then other ways to advocate. So if you want to participate in a science fair or a science demo, these are a lot of fun. As I mentioned earlier, you can get a table. This happens to be at our Expo, and this was a group of scientists, and they were showing people how to extract DNA from strawberries. And I think you can see the strawberries down here. A lot of fun. They were very happy and energetic, and kids loved it. And it's a great way, again, to bring the science out of your lab and in front of people, so they can see what you're doing and get a better appreciation for what goes on in science. If you really want to get more involved in advocacy, you can have training. The Association for the Advancement of Science has a whole toolkit at this website, and you can click on that and go to get all kinds of information about advocacy training. They have a list of resources and advocacy groups on their page as well, so you can join up with already existing groups that are out there. And they even have a hands-on course called CASE, which stands for Catalyzing Advocacy in Science and Engineering. And it's a training program where you learn how to communicate with your elected officials, and you can go, actually go to Washington, D.C. and lobby with your elected officials. Much more involved, but if you want to go into that, that's definitely something very interesting and something worthwhile to do. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say you could join your local March for Science, satellite, or affiliate, or create your own. This is a map of where we've had different March for Science satellites and affiliates. You can see there are quite a number of them throughout the world. There's a website that will give you a list of all of them. If there are not, there's not an affiliate or a satellite in your city or town, you can start one. There's a whole toolkit on March for Science at this the bottom link, where you will get the tools to be able to start your own March for Science satellite or affiliate if you're so inclined. Again, this is now, investing more time and effort, but as I can tell you, I'm a busy person too with my lab and all, but it's been a very worthwhile effort to be involved with the March for Science. So this is our, as I mentioned, this is our board here. We've got like 11 or 12 people, and I'm going to talk about some of the activities that we do as a local March for Science. And again, this is now more time consuming than the things I mentioned previously, but these are some things you can do either as a March for Science affiliate or as part of your own group that you may want to do. So we had a day of science, April 14, 2018. It started out with a rally outside in a park where we had different elected officials. We invited Democrats and Republicans to come speak to us. This was followed by a march that went from the park to a hotel where we had a science expo and a career fair. So this was a whole day event. It took a lot of planning and a lot of effort. So this is for people that have the time, have some time to be able to devote to that. So just to show you, this is a picture of our rally this is our 2017 rally when the weather was a little better than in 2018. We had about 1,700 people, and you can see they had signs. They were, very enthusiastic, and we had speakers down here. And then this is our march. Here's our Madam President of our organization and people marching on their way to the hotel. And then finally, we ended up at a hotel ballroom. This is the Expo, and you can see we had tables set up. This happens to be a children's science book table. But yeah, it was very successful. We had a lot of fun. It was a great time by everyone. So what's interesting is, as part of our Expo, we had all different kinds of science being presented. You think, oh, maybe just a science club, but look at some, I just picked up a few of these. We had about 60 tables. But I wanted to highlight a few of them to give you an idea of, you can find science everywhere. And part of our goal and part of what we wanted to convey is that science is in everything, and science is in everything that you're doing. And so we want to be, wanted to present this in different ways. So we had a group for a robotics group that had robots for demonstrations. We had laser energetics demonstrations. We had an amusement park talk about the science behind designing roller coasters, of all things. We had people talking about land conservation. Circuit Breaker Labs is a company that makes jewelry out of circuit boards. Rock Animal School, pictured here, they talk about animals and their habitats. We had the science of music, which was very, very well received because they talked about the science behind music and sound and physics and all that. And of course, the biology clubs, that you might expect. But, be creative and invite all kinds of different organizations that are related to science that you might not think about at first glance. The other thing to think about if you're going to do a science event, as we do all the time, and I myself as a diversity officer, is you want to make sure that your events are accessible. So we always made sure to have sign language interpreters, that the venue is accessible for people with wheels. We printed Braille programs. We made sure that there were family-friendly areas, including places where kids could play, or places where if the crowd got overwhelming, somebody could, or even for a kid or an adult, they could go off to a quiet room we had for them. And we tried to have some language interpretation as well to make sure that this included, it was very inclusive for everybody. And we also, you want it to be more than once a year. So we do now have outreach activities that are for underrepresented populations with events at the Boys and Girls Club, and we'll be having some hopefully at the YMCA. And we were really thrilled that some of the kids from our Boys and Girls Club came to our Expo. So there was a good collaboration there between the different organizations and trying to get people to participate. Now you might think, where do I get the money to pay for this? I mean, it is expensive because you need, if you're going to have a rally, you need permits. You need to rent event space. You know, we had a hotel, big hotel ballroom that was pretty expensive. You've got consumables and, you know, rental. We rented a truck, a U-Haul truck. So, you know, it costs money to do all of this. And so there are fundraising things that I'll mention a few of the ways that you can do fundraising if you want to have your own event of some kind. So what we did, we had a celebrity tap takeover with some of members of our board as guest bartenders. And we ended up, you know, we'd get a percentage of the profits or of the tips towards our events. And we've also had merchandise, things like t-shirts and pins. And there are companies set up, because you have to be very careful about money if you're a charitable organization. There are companies that are set up that will have something online where somebody will get a t-shirt or a pin, and percentage of proceeds will be sent from the company to you as a donation. So you have to be very careful legally with what's a donation versus not selling something yourself. The other way to fundraise is to write a grant. Now, many of us out here are either in academia or in industry, and we write a lot of grants. So you can use the skill set that you use to write your grants for your lab and write a grant for your organization. In fact, we did this. We're waiting to hear about our grant that we submitted a few months ago. So there are organizations that will fund science education, science communication. And these are some ideas. So for example, the March for Science has a community grant program, and that's where we sent our grant application. We're waiting to find out about that. As I mentioned, the professional organizations, some of them have funds for science education and outreach and that sort of thing. And you may even have local community grant programs where you can write the grant and have money come in for a program that you want to put on. Even sometimes local supermarkets will donate food for your event. So there are a lot of different ways of fundraising and getting different ideas like that. So let's talk in summary. As I mentioned, you want to vote. That's my take-home message, and encourage others to vote. Talk to your friends and family about science and voting. Donate to the pro-science causes. Call and write your policymakers and get involved at any level. So even if you're very, very busy, there are things that you can do. And if you want to devote the time, there are things you can do at very high levels of involvement. So think about it, and definitely stand up for science, promote science. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gail. That was a great presentation. And now we have a few questions from the audience.
Okay.
If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll put them to Gail. So I know that you've gone through a lot of information about how you can get involved and why people should get involved. Could you share a little bit about how you ended up getting involved?
Yes, of course, as a scientist, I'm very interested in science and in research, and hoping to, always interested in funding for medical research. So that's always been my driving force. And then, you know, after the events of 2016 and new administration coming in, it seemed like there was less emphasis on the importance of science. And when I saw that there was going to be possibly a March for Science, just like there was a Women's March, I thought this is right up my alley. So I found my local March for Science. There was a Facebook page, and you can look on Facebook and find the pages and for individual cities. And I signed up, and I've been with them since early 2017, right about the beginning of when they started. Now I'm a board member. So you can definitely do a lot, when you become involved that way.
Okay, and then our next question is about calling. Do you have any scripts or anything that you use when you call your elected officials?
I don't have any script myself, but a lot of the professional organizations have scripts. If you're a member of an engineering society or a biological society or a lot of them have an arm where they have scripts prepared for you that you can probably find one that's even tailored toward your field if you want. And it doesn't even have to be very long. I mean, you can call and give one sentence. Hi, my name is blah. I work here. I'm interested in this. Please support that. It could be that short. It doesn't even have to be very long.
Okay, yeah, that's been my experience as well. And to follow up on that, if you're calling, say, an elected official, do you need to give out anything besides your name?
Sometimes if you're for phone calls, sometimes they'll ask you, they want to know that if you're in the district of the person. Okay. It makes more impact if you live in that district. I know some people do call other districts, for very important legislation, and you can, but you'll be heard more if you're in that district. They'll ask maybe for your zip code or your address or something. Even if you do it online, sometimes they want to make sure that you live in the district, and they might ask for where you live. They just don't, they want to make sure you're a legitimate person calling.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to have somebody who's calling somebody calling 5 times, or somebody who's from outside of their district would make sense.
Right, or even like a bot or some other weird,
yeah. Oh, okay. So somebody just typed in about ResistBot. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I have heard of that. Yeah. Okay. I haven't actually used it myself, but I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were asking about, it was like, oh, this leads in very well. They're asking about if you found that to be effective at all.
I don't have experience with it, but I know people who do, and they like it, so they think it's effective.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have so somebody was interested in starting a March for Science in their city.
Ooh, that's exciting. Yeah, so there is a website. Okay, and they can actually, if they want to. Yeah, so it's www.marchforscience.com/startsat.
Okay.
So that's, if you want to start your own satellite, you can go there. And I would also recommend, if you're going to do that, get a group of friends or people, get a sort of a critical mass of people rather than trying to do it by yourself. It really helped that we had, 12, 15 people when we started out. People with different skill sets, somebody's good with numbers and accounting, and somebody else who's good with promotions and writing, and people that could run a website or a Facebook page. It's good to have several people involved rather than try to do it all yourself.
Oh yeah, that makes sense, because if you start, and also then that way you have more people to get the word out as well.
Yeah. Do they say where they are? I'm curious what city they're in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then we have a question. Okay, so this is kind of, what have you found to be the biggest obstacle to you getting involved? Or what was your biggest, either like mental hurdle, or like it just asks, what was your greatest obstacle in getting involved, or your greatest concern?
Being too busy. That was my, I'm very busy. I don't have a lot of time. Somehow you manage to squeeze in, emails come in at certain times from the board, or we have a meeting, now it's monthly, but sometimes we have weekly meetings when we're planning an event. There can be a lot of meetings. So it keeps me very, very busy. But, like I say, it's very worthwhile, and I'm going to stick with it.
And what has been your best experience?
The best experience, I think, is, well, there are a couple. One is just, meeting these wonderful people who are on the board that I, think they're wonderful people. And then also by just going to the event and seeing the impact, and seeing, going into our first rally and expo, just the number of people and the turnout and the excitement. And that we thought, wow, we did this, just a few of us did this huge thing, and it made such an impact. And now, people know about us, and we're out there, and I just love seeing the people coming to the expo and the rally and marching, and just the excitement of it, and how, and even the smaller events that we do with the Boys and Girls Club. I haven't actually been to that event yet, but I've been involved in planning it. And it's very rewarding to know that you're making a difference and trying to influence the next generation of scientists and getting kids interested. That's really, and giving back, after being so focused on yourself, in your own
Right.
career and what you're trying to do, give back to other people.
Well, I think on that note, that's going to bring us to the end of the webinar.
Great.
So thank you again, Gail, for a very illuminating presentation and a fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed hearing about your personal experiences with getting started.
Thanks.
And thanks also to our sponsor, March for Science in Rochester. And finally, thanks to you, the audience, for taking the time to attend and listen in. If you've enjoyed the webinar and would like to view the video recording of the session, please visit the webinars page on bitesizebio.com. It should be available within the next 24 hours. There, you can also see the other webinars we've lined up for you on BiteSize Bio. So until next time, good luck in your research and goodbye from all of us at March for Science in Rochester and BiteSize Bio.